Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans. They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Hello, Mavs friends. I'm Kirk Henderson. Thank you for once again joining Pod Maverick After Dark. Tonight, I am joined by fellow editor over at Mavs Moneyball, Ben Zadell. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, Kirk.
Well, I'm glad you joined me because just for full disclosure, I was attempting to take the night off because I am solo parenting both of my children. And then Josh had something come up and the decision was made that I would attempt to podcast. And so we might have a very odd show here because for those of you who follow along most nights, I have he's now 6 week old and he is sleeping in his bassinet directly above me. I have a camera here to my left that I'm watching him on. So if I have all of a sudden bolt off the stage in the middle of the show, that will be why. And Ben will carry for a second. I will go get Mr. Grant and he will come join us angry as hell, probably. But all right, Ben. So the Dallas Mavericks played their fourth game in 7 nights. They played the Minnesota Timberwolves. The final score was 119 to 1-on-1. I watched this game. This was the most like fan. I was like doing laundry and other stuff while watching the game. This wasn't the closest attention I've ever paid to a basketball game. But to me, this really felt like two things. Like number one, the Dallas Mavericks were playing their fourth game in 7 nights. They were playing without some of their best players. They ran out of gas while also playing one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, it's just one of those games where the Timberwolves just kind of wore them down over the course of the game. They, in my opinion, the Wolves didn't play super well, but you could just really feel the Mavericks started off a pretty good run. I don't have the numbers in front of me as far as what they outscored them in the first quarter, but then just over the next 3 quarters, you could just tell that they were running out of gas. And the Timberwolves are a really good defensive team. Again, I didn't look up any of the numbers. I was like you, kind of struggling to get set up here. I know they're really good on defense and it showed tonight. Again, I know the Mavericks are, fourth game in 7 nights, but they made life really tough on them. The Mavs got some open shots, I know, but you could just tell that there was some really, they're a long, big team and it caused the Mavs problems.
Well, the sort of hilariously definitive stat of the game for me was Naz Reid hitting 7 3-pointers and then the Dallas Mavericks hitting 7 3-pointers. So by the end of the game, you're looking at this and, the final score is an 18-point game. That's effectively a blowout by range. But the Mavericks were in this game up until elements of the fourth quarter where they were turning over the ball with 7 or 8 minutes left. And it's just Lively. It was so funny. My dad's actually here. He was watching the game with me, and I was telling him about Lively and how good he was. And then Luka makes this one pass to Lively at the top of the key, and Rudy Gobert strips him in the open court, and then and I'm just like, well, if that's the way this game is going to go, and obviously Rudy Gobert is a former defensive player of the year and probable defensive player of the year with how he's playing this year. But it was just sort of indicative of what the challenge of the game was for the Mavericks because they clearly didn't have enough juice. And at a certain point, the Kyrie being out is going to catch up with them. Josh Green being out is going to catch up with them. There's all sorts of stuff that can really be problematic over time for these Mavericks. Beyond sort of our bland takeaways, what were sort of the things that were most interesting to you about this game? Because I feel like I feel like I learned some things from watching these Mavericks in the sense of I thought, a lot of the games we watched the Mavericks sort of lay down and die last year or not even play to begin with. And so it's like I was telling somebody in another group chat, like, yeah, Luka played 40 minutes for the fourth time in a row. Yeah. And the answer is like, well, why? And or the question in response was why? And to me, the answer is very clearly like these guys want to go out and try to win every single game. And yes, they got blown out, but that's something that matters to me. What else did you see?
Yeah, it's a really weird tone shift, even from going back 2 years. Yeah, 2 years ago to the year they went to the Western Conference Finals. Even that year, they were like these games where it was just you could tell they gave up the game the day before because they're announcing Luka's not going to play. Or that hey, these three guys are sitting, and they're just not doing that this year. I thought for sure. He would sit maybe Monday against the Grizzlies, or I was kind of surprised he played this game. I thought they would sit him at some point, and they're just like refusing to sit him. So I don't know what the exact change in strategy there is, other than like you're saying, they're just like, hey, we're tired of getting to the end of the year and being kind of 2 games back of this, or we need to win 3 out of the next 4 to either secure the top 4 seed or even make the play in or stuff like that. And they're just really trying to get after it early in the season, and that's a big tone shift going back 3 or 4 years where they treated it was almost like they've treated in the past the regular season like they were defending champions, and they're like, hey, look, we just need to grab a top 4 seed and just pace ourselves this whole season. And this year, they're actually acting like a team that missed the playoffs last year and really just wants to get back into the mix. So it's a really cool, like you said, a really cool tone shift that they're battling every game, and even this game, they to me, the Lakers game and this game are like a scheduled loss. Mm-hmm. Yet they still, they fought and won the Lakers game, and this turned into a blowout, but it turned into a blowout really late. One of those games where you could tell the Mavs. They could feel it slipping away, and then they just kind of gave up on it. So it was a lot closer than the score looks.
Yeah, and so I scheduled this whole show late. Like I got everything down except I didn't press the actual schedule button. And I noticed that when I came to click into the show, and I was like, oh no, this is bad, because that normally has an effect. I leave the show open and people can join early and talk in the comments. And so tonight, a few people joined in the comments within the 10 minutes before when I scheduled the show. And there's a lot of frustration in our comment section because nobody wants to lose. And I really do. I appreciate that. I think it's interesting. But one of the things that I was just sort of really worried about. I'm getting some interesting audio feedback. Is that from me?
Yeah, no, that's my dog actually.
Oh,
deciding to just
he's tapping around. It sounded like somebody typing.
No, and I was like, that's the dog deciding to move all around the room all of a sudden.
Right now, after she's probably been lying down.
Oh, he's been completely still for like 20 minutes before we got on. So
and it's fantastic. Okay, I just didn't know if it was me or not. I was like feeling crazy.
No, that was me. In fact, while you go here, I'm going to let him out. So
that's fantastic. So I normally, and I think I said this during the Lakers game, I think I mentioned just how mad I expected to be during one of these losses. And I'm not necessarily all that disappointed because they came out and played really hard. Now, I have some concerns coming away from this game, but not near as bad as I would have thought. Anthony Edwards played like crap, so that really helped the Mavericks. But the Wolves destroyed the Mavericks in the preseason, and they're the kind of size-based team that I thought was going to like sort of run them out of the room from the beginning of the game. So that the Mavericks were able to battle this much was pretty interesting. And you're going through the box score, and you're looking at who played like shit, frankly, and you can sit there and say, okay, if one of these guys hits one more shot, 2 more shots, and you guys know who we're talking about. We're talking about our Grant Williams of the world. We're talking about our Derek Jones Jr., who just really had bad games. Tim Hardaway Jr. like had one of his games where you're like straight to the gulag for Timmy H. And it's not, I don't know. It's a thing where the fact that we're mad about a game that felt like a schedule loss feels like sort of progress for everybody, because at this point last year, there's a lot of like bargaining going on where it's like, oh, well, they'll play better at some point. And the Mavericks never really did, which is something. And so I don't know. I'm trying to think like what else would I really want to talk about this game? You know, it's like Luka was once again transcendent, and then I also watched him play like truly horrendous defense. I'm worried that he's going to miss games in February at the rate that he's picking up technicals as of late, and I don't like want to harp on the technical element because you know he that's one where like Jason Kidd needs to get a technical for him.
Yeah.
Like that was such a bad non-call. I don't know what to do. Like, you know, your elbow and your forearm and your sole is not part of the ball.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we're kind of tired of talking about it because I mean, what can you say at this point other than like he has got to like stop because there's a way. Again, that's a foul. It was a foul that was not called. The early, you know, when he got the technical. Right.
At what point in the game did it happen?
It was early first quarter. Like, you know, not long. Yeah, not long enough for him to be like, oh, this is the 10th time this has happened this game. I'm really frustrated. And it was a blatant foul, but you know what? At a certain point, you have to like as a player recognize that like the refs are going to miss some of these calls. That you know, it's just going to happen. And there's a way to go over there and kind of berate the ref and kind of, you know, negotiate, manipulate, whatever. You know, be angry about it, but there's a way to do that without picking up that tech, and there really is, because he just goes from 0 to 10, and there's a way to do it. He needs to honestly study like LeBron tape of how to like get in the ref's face but not get a technical. So you know, because it's just getting to a point where it's hurting him. I mean, again, we're talking about it when I said I didn't want to talk about it, but
no, but it didn't. You know, Luka played one of these games, another just truly remarkably insane stat line, 39 and 13 to go with, let's see here, how many rebounds? 6 rebounds. And you know, he shot the ball terribly from 3, which is what it is. So did the rest of the Mavericks. And you just sort of end up in a place where the Mavericks lose and you walk away and you're like, all right, what more could Luka Doncic do? I don't think there's really much of an answer there. Like I'm seeing some frustration in the comments, and like you guys know, I tend to get very frustrated with Jason Kidd. I'm not sure what sort of adjustments you're supposed to make when Kyrie Irving is out, when Josh Green is out, even though I don't know how to. I think you're with me on this. Like, I don't mind not seeing Josh Green.
Yeah, for me in this game, yeah, for sure. The Jason Kidd stuff. This was very there was nothing wrong really to me in the micro. It was more of a continuation of the macro problems with Jason Kidd. I mean, they played like really 6 guys. If you go look at the minutes that guys played, that was kind of weird. But again, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. So there's a couple players that I'm like, well, you know, like, why didn't this guy, you know, at least throw, let's say, like Rashawn Holmes out there and see what you could get from him? I'm not the biggest Rashawn Holmes fan, but I mean, like, just on the third game in 4 nights, playing like 6 guys, like the amount of minutes that he did is kind of concerning. The other thing is you can find it somewhere. I think even Dan Devine out of Yahoo like clipped it. Alexander Walker on the Timberwolves actually shouted out like early on what play the Mavericks going to run. This is like first quarter, second quarter, somewhere in there. And you can hear the audio, the game audio picks it up, and he's out there yelling stack, stack, stack. And basically called out the play that they were going to run before they even got it set up. And so they're for me, they're a little bit too predictable, which is something I think we complained about last year. That was a big thing.
The predictable nature of, you know, after 20 something games, there is an element of predictability that comes in because these guys all have tape on one another. And like the Minnesota Timberwolves are, I don't know if they aren't the best defense, they're one of the best defenses. And our guy, Matthew Phillips, who I think is writing the recap, gets really frustrated with kind of the lack of no calls. But like the best defense in the league often tends to foul the most, and they get called the least. And they play a physical brand of basketball. It is what it is. But one of the things I think that we'll see with these Mavericks as the year goes along is hopefully a little bit more evolution of their offense. Like they have things that they don't do, and they don't do them because they haven't needed to use them.
Yeah.
You know, they do a little bit of Kyrie Luka pick and roll when they're out there. They do a little bit of Grant Luka pick and roll when they're out there. They utilize the Luka Doncic lively pick and roll more than I ever would have thought they would, and it works really well. And then the Wolves just have enough size to where they don't have to send that double all that often. I mean, Luka got guarded really well by some of their guys tonight, and he'll have to, if they play the Wolves again and he's a little more rested, he played a good game, but there's elements I'm sure that he wish he had back. Like if you get your pocket picked by slow-mo, that's a rough offense.
That's what I was going to say. Slow-mo played him really well, and if you had asked me, a couple of nights ago or something like, hey, who are one of the, what would be a good guy to guard Luka with? I would never say Kyle Anderson, like not once.
Never. Ever.
But he just like stayed with him and just was a big body in front. I forget always how big he is.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just a big body in front of Luka and stayed with him pretty good. So again, I think if Luka's not, playing on his like 150th minute of the week, probably he probably does not struggle as much against Anderson, but still I was impressed. But yeah, no, like you mentioned that Luka Doncic, Derek Lively pick and roll it's just fun to watch, man. And especially with how talented Luka is. That for me, this was just a really fun Luka game to watch. I know there weren't any of the crazy like creative passes that we're used to seeing, but it was just really fun the way he's just able to like manipulate defenses by like moving his eyes. There was one point I think late in the second quarter where he ran that pick and roll with Lively, and he was able to get Derek Johnson a shot, a 3-point corner shot just by
Derek Jones.
Derek Jones. I'm sorry. Yeah, Derek
Johnson was a Kansas City Chief when I was a child.
There you go, Derek Jones. DJJ. There we go. So, but he was able to get him a corner three by he went around that pick from Lively, and just the way he moved his eyes. I think it was like 1:26 left in the second quarter. If anybody wants to go back and look, but the way he moved the entire defense just with his eyes, and then it was a little no look pass over to the corner. Jones missed it, but it was still a very cool. Just the way he could manipulate the whole 3 to 4 guys on the court at one time with just his like head movement. It's fun to watch.
Oh man. So this is the opportunity in the normal podcast where I take a moment and ask for folks to do me the favor and consider liking the stream right now. We got 110 folks in here, which is pretty good for a loss, and pretty good for like a weeknight loss against a team that's lesser known. But likes are always very helpful. So if you could go, I would love to see 110 likes immediately in the stream. It would be great. If you haven't considered subscribing to Pod Maverick, go ahead and do so. I need to figure out the mechanics of how you guys get notified of when we go live, because if there's the ability to get notified every time we go live, if there is, someone shoot me a message about that. I think once you subscribe to the channel, you have the option, and we go live after nearly every game, usually within 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes a little more. And according to some of our viewers, what I'm going to try to do tonight is merge our normal two. We have been doing 2 distinct shows, but what I'll do here is punt Ben at about a half-hour mark, take a 30-second break, probably re-air our very sweet music, our pod intro music, and then you guys can come up here and join the show and talk to me about basketball. We had a really fun time after the Lakers game, just a really good time, and I would like it if you guys can, kind of continue coming up here to talk basketball with me.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Okay, what are some other elements of this game, or really this season? Like, you haven't been on the show much this season at all.
I haven't been at all. This is the first time this season.
Oh, well,
I've been on a podcast hiatus.
Well, I think that's also your liking, because I was like, hey, let's stay up late. And you were like, do I want to? Do I want to?
I got to get my beauty rest.
That's right. So, is there anything else kind of from this game? Because I'm trying not to overreact to it. And I also don't really, it's like Tim Hardaway has a bad game. Tim Hardaway was due for a bad game. Yeah. I mean, shout out to being negative 30 in 32 minutes. That's remarkably impressive. But I'm trying to think if like there's anything else worth really honing in on this one.
Well, I can drop a hot take here. We shouldn't really be that concerned because the Mavs just lost, third game in 4 nights to a team that's going to make the Western Conference Finals this year. So, like, what are you going to do? That's I think they're that good. I think they're that strong, and the Mavs are, second round exit maybe at best. So, I mean, I can't get upset about a team like that. Losing to a team like that early in the season on such a bad schedule. I'm not going to sit here and rant about the NBA schedule. The fact that, the Mavs play, what was it, like 6 games in like 16 days. And now they're going to cram a bunch of games into like 20 days. It's
my friend Mares, who runs some of the stuff over at DNVR, said today that if you want to talk, like almost all NBA storylines are schedule based.
Yeah.
Because he said the Nuggets have played a really crazy first 20 something games, and then they get, kind of an easy schedule the rest of the way, which is really something. And so I don't know. I've this season as a whole, I've really had a good time. I've not been super stressed out about it. I think some of that has to do with sort of where I am in my personal life. But they've got enough playable guys to where most nights are interesting. I mean, we should be talking more about the fact that Kyrie Irving hasn't, he got hurt. And, like before Kyrie Irving was re-signed to the Mavericks, one of the things that kept getting brought up over and over by people who didn't want the Mavericks to sign Kyrie was like, look, the guy's injury prone, but not in like he is a person who is like a injured body. It's more somehow, some way with the way he plays, he ends up hurt in very weird fashion. And what do you know? Dwight Powell injured Kyrie Irving in very weird fashion. So, if he's able to come back at any point this, like in December, I think the Mavericks should kind of count themselves lucky. It's just been the kind of season so far to where I'm having a hard time getting particularly jazzed about certain stuff. Like my friend Harold just shot me a message and he's saying, man, the Mavericks, the Maverick, Jason Kidd only played Dante Exum he played him like the 6th most minutes in the first half or something like that. What's he say here? And that's the sort of thing that in a losing, 6 most minutes, 12 minutes in the first half when he's probably a starting guy. He was a plus 16 in those minutes. I get it, but it's just at the same time with how many injuries this team has had to what you would assume were their rotation guys, the fact that they are where they are feels nothing short of remarkable. Like, yeah. I'm not a big Jason Kidd guy. I'm never going to be a big Jason Kidd guy, ever. He's been in my life since I was 13. I mean, I had his poster up in my room. But now I'm just like kind of over him as a coach. But at the same time, what do you do? Like, the team is winning. What sort of criticisms can we really be leveling? Like, I'm just having a good time.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're beating the bad teams, and that's been such a problem for them. Again, going back to like we talked about with them punting games, and that was the problem with them punting games, is because they were losing to teams that they should have beat. So they're not doing that anymore. So it has that feeling of like, hey, they're actually like a solid team, and when they're not losing these awful games where it's like, hey, the tanking Pistons are, missing their 2 best players, and somehow the Mavs still find a way to lose. They're not doing that anymore. So it's fun, and then there's just I think we got so used to over the last couple of years, just that whole, trying to produce open threes, and they're still doing that. But now they've got Kyrie Irving. He does a little bit more than just stand out there and shoot. They've got a couple guys, Exum can actually dribble and, make some plays. So they're it's a different team. So it feels refreshing, I guess, is the best way to put it. They're winning games that they're supposed to win, and it's looking a little bit different. They finally, shuffled the lineup and did it in a good way. There's good young players. It's a fun team. So I'm like you. I can't get mad about games like this where like I feel like they should have lost the Lakers game. They pulled out a win. They probably should have lost this one too, honestly, and they were kept it close. So it's just hard to get upset about watching Luka play like this, and then they're like third, fourth seed or something like that. I think I checked earlier today. They were the third.
They were third before the loss,
yeah.
and they probably bumped back just because the West is really yet to separate itself at this point. I think if I was to really like issue one sort of criticism, it would be like I need Grant Williams to buck the fuck up already. Like local man like who goes out tweeting Batman photos and all this stuff about how cool he is. I just don't do that. Don't do like I will be less critical if you don't act the fool. Like because go ahead.
Well, I just think he's kind of like on the Tim Hardaway experience, because I think the Lakers game he played really good. I think he hit like 19 points, something. He was
like amazing.
That. Yeah,
but that was the first amazing game he'd had, since Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. Yeah. I mean, it's been a while.
I just think he's going to be that type of player as well. He's pretty young too. I think 24, 25 years old. So he's still, he's got growing up to do there. I don't think, there's not going to be some huge leap in his future.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I mean is growing up, just getting a little bit more consistent. But again, you look at Tim Hardaway Jr., he's 31, 32, and that's just kind of his thing. He's more consistent than Grant Williams, of course.
He takes the occasional shot and does the thing like the person, like, we're too old to play pickup now, but it's like when somebody who takes a terrible shot in pickup and then is like, my bad, after taking the terrible shot. And it's like, yes, it was your bad. Never do that again.
Right.
Like he shot a 15-foot air ball that hurt me physically.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what are we doing? And, fan123 just says in the chat, Grant Williams plays defense. So that's why he gets time on the court, but he definitely cost us a win tonight. I mean, he was part of the costing of the win. Like we can't lay everything at his feet, but it's just there. I took issue with him before, like when he was a Celtic, because he kind of plays, there's a WWE element to the NBA that can be really, really fun if you're in the right headspace for it. But then if you're not, if you just want to watch like basketball for the sake of basketball, it can really drive you nuts. And Grant Williams is a little bit theatrical in sometimes the best ways and other times the worst ways. So it's like 2 days ago, he is posting that tweet with, Batman Returns with all this stuff. And it was very funny. And then he comes out and posts a 2 for 11.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
I guess in my mind, it's guys like that, they're the reason he's affordable for the Mavericks is because of stuff like that. He's just not going to be consistent. If he was consistent in like, those Tuesday games, then they would have had to pay him 20 to, like Jalen Brunson money almost, so. I mean, that's what you get when you're paying a guy, 12, 13 million a year. So,
right.
That's the reason why he was available.
I know. Well,
I think he's one of those guys that you hope in the playoffs that he gets hot for like 6 weeks.
Yep.
Over the course of a long season, you're going to find out why he was gettable. So
let me ask you something, and we're close to wrapping up, and then we'll carry on to the live show where other folks can come up here and join and talk with me. Last night after the Lakers game, there was a lot of kind of conversation about like trade stuff as we got deeper and deeper into the conversation. And I am never good at trades. I also have settled on the fact that I think this team is just going to be small. And I think anything they give up takes away from what has gotten them to this point. Like when Tim plays a bad game, most of us want to trade Tim. But I also really think that Tim Hardaway is a X factor in when he's hitting some of the garbage shots that he takes. He helps break the offense wide open. So I don't really like, there's nobody to replace that role on the team. It's not going to be Seth Curry. It's just not. He's not that kind of shooter. He's also smaller. So I just, while I would like to see them make a trade, I also don't see they only have one first round pick available to them right now. I think if they do that, they are basically that's the last thing they do, for a while. And so I'm not ready for that. So it's like, I would rather them hold on to that pick and then see if that opens up other stuff down the road. Do you have any real Do you have any like additional like trade related thoughts, or where do you fall on this? I should know this because you write for our site. We've not really talked about it.
No, it really, because I mean, like, I'm like you. There's really nothing to talk about, in my opinion. They don't have anything to trade. It's fun to sit here and say like, oh, they've got Hardy and they've got maybe Prosper. I can't imagine them trading Prosper, or he's just too raw at this point. And one first round pick. I don't think they have any second round picks even. Maybe they've got one.
No, they got a whole bunch as part of the Grant Williams deal.
Oh, okay. There you go. So,
but I don't remember where they fall.
But again, you can sit there and say, oh, they have this, this, and this, but it doesn't matter what they have. It matters what can they beat someone else's package, So anybody that you would get like excited about, they just really can't afford as far as like trade assets. So I really just haven't put anything. Yeah, I haven't spent much time thinking about it because there's just really not much there. So, but I'm like you. Yeah, everybody wants to like trade Tim. He's the only guy that they have that really moves on offense, if that makes sense. Like he's running around off screens and pin downs and stuff like that. And he's really the only guy that they have that can shoot off of movement like that, So I really, it would change the offense. I mean, now granted, you could sit there and make the argument that if they pulled somebody back, if they got somebody back for him that was better on defense, maybe that changes the team for the better. And you can afford, sustain that offensive drop that you would have by not having Tim out there, which is a good bet because you've got Doncic and Irving, so that might be really, worth the bet. But again, you got to be like sure about that. I think if you're the Mavs front office, and plus again, I don't know. I think does Hardaway have one more year left next year?
Yes, this is year 3. It's yeah,
and it's a pretty cheap. So I mean, like maybe somebody just wants to clear some books and get somebody. I don't know. I can't imagine them pulling off a trade with Hardaway that would just change the course of this team significantly, even if you add somebody like Hardy. So I just really don't have a ton of. I'm like you. I would just rather them just kind of roll with this team. It's a good team. It's probably not good enough to get to like a Western Conference Finals. But it's a good team. I think they'll make the playoffs pretty easily and maybe make some noise depending on the matchup they get.
So let me ask you something stupid that I should know the answer to as a person who has who runs our freaking website. When do the Mavericks play again?
That is a good question too. I believe Saturday.
Okay. So here's likely what's to happen here. So we're gonna take a brief minute-long-ish break, and then we're gonna resume with our fan show here. For those of you listening to the audio feed, that will be posted at some point Friday afternoon. That will be Mavs or group therapy since the Mavericks lost. You can head over to MavsMoneyball.com and find all the things, that we have been writing over the last few weeks. Jason Kidd actually referenced Meta Robinson's piece in pregame, which was pretty friggin' fascinating.
That was the best.
That was, and it wasn't like derogatory. It's just like I was reading this, and I think that sort of stuff is super cool.
She's a huge add to the website. So she's awesome.
Yeah, so there's stuff, we've written a fair amount of things the last week just with games back, and that's kind of how it ends up working over at Mavs Moneyball. So if you consider meandering over there and looking at that, Ben, do you have anything else before I punch you?
No, I had a good time tonight, and I appreciate the chance to come on and talk about it. So
all right, guys, if you will go ahead and hold on here in the show, we will be right back, and I will figure out how to edit some of this stuff. Those of you listening on the audio stream, thank you so much for your time. I am Kirk Henderson. This has been Pod Maverick After Dark. We will be right back with our edition of, let's see here, what do we call it? Group therapy. Everybody just hold tight.